Don't you think Russia is probably eager to learn more about what may or may not have happened between Pete Hegseth and the woman he paid off? Don't you think our adversaries are probably looking for ways to find out more about the contents of that House ethics report into Matt Gaetz? Don't you think our allies are probably thinking twice about sharing intelligence with Putin apologist and Assad sympathizer Tulsi Gabbard? I think so. And those are all questions we should be taking incredibly seriously right now. So listen, I know it has only been 2 weeks since the election. Feels like it was yesterday or a month ago. And it was an election where Trump won all 7 swing states and made gains in nearly every demographic group. And that does warrant some reflection from within the Democratic Party and all of the groups that support it, and from all of us, too, about why that happened and what needs to change and how we should look at things differently. And sometimes it warrants some time watching rom-coms. But here's the thing. Winning the election doesn't mean Trump has a mandate to do whatever he wants. It certainly doesn't mean he has a mandate to force through Matt Gaetz as Attorney General or Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. It also doesn't mean that Trump's stated interest in mass deportation should just be accepted as inevitable because he won the election, right? It actually means the opposite. It means that this right now is the time to gather your neighbors, to call your members of Congress, to make your voices heard. The answer right now, and really the job right now for all of us, is to raise concerns when you have them, to voice those concerns, to never stop questioning. We aren't powerless here. You are not powerless. We don't have to just throw up our hands at these eye-popping stories and decide there is nothing stopping it. That's exactly what he wants you to do. He wants you to feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of headlines and to feel uncertain about how and where to object. He wants you to feel frozen in this moment. But you aren't. We all have voices. You have a voice. You can raise questions, and we can all demand answers. My first guest tonight has been asking questions for a very long time. He always demands answers. He never is quiet. Bob Woodward is, of course, a veteran journalist and associate managing editor at the Washington Post. More than 50 years after he and Carl Bernstein cracked open the Watergate scandal, he's still at it today. His latest book about the Biden and Trump presidencies is called War. It's excellent. It's such a good read. And he joins me now. It is great to see you. I cannot think of anyone who has covered more people, more presidents, more people in these key positions than you. So I am so thrilled to be talking to you tonight. I just wanted to start just with a scene from the prologue of your new book about a chance encounter you and Carl Bernstein had with Donald Trump in 1989.
35 years
35
ago.
Years ago. And
he wasn't in politics.
He wasn't in politics. That's right. Now, you write in your prologue. Even in 1989, Trump's character was focused on winning, fighting, and surviving. And the only way you do that, he said, is instinct. If people know you're a folder, if people know that you're going to be weak, they're going to go after you. Now, as we know today, if we look at the news today, Trump is standing by Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth. And even despite these scandals, I'm guessing that's not a surprise to you, having covered him for 35 years?
Yeah, well, and the rule is never fold, never give in. And if you need to be a killer, okay. If you need to give people candy, that's okay. Killer, candy, you just want to win.
That's his rule.
That's Trump. And here, there's this coincidence I wrote out, and I'm sorry that I didn't get it fully in my head. And this is an astonishing continuity. The front page of the New York Times this morning, the story done by Peter Baker said, Mr. Trump has said that real power is the ability to engender fear. I think that's exactly right. Trump uttered those words 8 years ago when Bob Costa and I were interviewing Trump, and he said, real power is, I don't want to even use the word fear. That's what we have seen from Trump since that day. My first book on Trump was, of course, called Fear, because that's exactly what he does. He knows that's what the real power is, to scare people, to frighten people, and that's exactly what we see playing out today.
It is, and I wanted to ask you about that because there's a couple things happening right now. There are the personnel picks, and I mentioned a couple of them. He's standing by Matt Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard for DNI. You've covered him for decades. Why do you think he picked them, and is he standing by to provoke fear, or what is it about?
Well, you know, you're in your car driving down the street, the check engine light goes on. What do? Pull into a grocery store? No, you look for a filling station where there might be somebody who knows what to do. Trump is doing the exact opposite. He is intentionally kind of sabotaging the system. Steve Bannon, his old political advisor, actually says that in the first months of the Trump administration, the idea is to pierce tradition, obliterate it, put a hand grenade over it. And so you see all of these appointees that Trump made, that he's standing by. What does he want? He wants a revolution where he controls completely. And to achieve that, he has to destroy the system. So driving down the road, check engine light goes on, he goes into a clown store because that's what's happened.
That's where your book, which is so relevant to this moment, because you actually talk about what people in these past jobs, including people Trump had in his first administration, did. And I want to read this chilling anecdote. You remember it, but for people who haven't read your book yet, in your book about Secretary Mattis, and you write this quote: Mattis had been so worried that Trump would have a nuclear war with North Korea during his watch that he had slept in gym clothes, ready in an emergency to join a secure call, a national event conference to deal with the threat. If North Korea launched an ICBM, Trump had delegated the authority to the Secretary of Defense to shoot down a missile that threatened the United States. Now, whatever people think of Mattis, he was a serious person with a serious background.
One of the great generals, one of the great secretaries of defense.
Exactly. Now, okay, I was just going to ask you, knowing what you know about him, you write about him and what he has to be prepared for. Go ahead.
There's another part in the book. Mattis was so worried that he might have to launch a nuclear weapon at North Korea to protect the United States if Kim Jong-un, the mad leader, fired one. And so Mattis, it wasn't only sleeping in his gym clothes, he went to the National Cathedral alone to pray that he would not be forced to make that decision. Here we have the Secretary of Defense on his knees in the National Cathedral alone, worried about the national security destruction that Trump had created in his first term.
And that tells you how much somebody who had the military experience of him, how much it weighed on him. And I wanted to ask you, because you've been covering secretaries of defense through 10 presidents, knowing what we know about Pete Hegseth, do you feel that he is equipped to do that job?
Well, you know, somebody should get that job who knows the military and has had also management experience. From what I read about him, no, he doesn't. And I have known over the reporting time I've had for 5 decades, 16 secretaries of defense, going back even before I was a reporter, Robert McNamara. And they have to know management, they have to know what the responsibility is, they have to know where the levers of power are. And in this appointee, I see none of that. Now, you have to ask yourself, why wouldn't Trump want somebody who at least has some experience? He's trying to recreate the imperial presidency. He's trying to say, I can do whatever I want. It's up to me alone.
And he doesn't want them to have the power. I wanted the other one.
He doesn't want to share it.
Doesn't want to share it. That is a striking, and I hope people listen to what you just said about what you need for that job. You also talk in your book about, you have this story about the former director of national intelligence, Dan Coats. And you say Coats worked in Trump's national security inner circle at the top of the central nervous system of the American espionage establishment and its most vital secrets. That's what that job does. He had a
2.5 years.
2.5 years. He had a front row seat to Trump's words and actions. His reaching out and never saying anything bad about Putin and saying positive things about Putin. For me, Coates said, it's scary. Is it blackmail? Coates had wondered. He was never able to figure it out, but there was something there. He was sure. And this stuck out to me so much because we fast forward to today, and Trump has nominated someone who has been an apologist for Putin, who has been an apologist for Bashar al-Assad, in Tulsi Gabbard. And how does that strike you? What does having someone like her in that job, what concerns do you have?
What's the goal? What's the purpose? You know, there are all kinds of people with various political persuasions who have enough experience to run the Pentagon, but he picks someone who isn't even near it. And you have to say, what is the goal? Having written 3 books on Trump, spent hours with him, the goal is to give him all the say, all the power. Real power is fear. He knows, and fear, you know, that's what we're living in now. This is the era of fear, because he's going to be president for 4 years. And if this is the idea, it is so, it's almost unconstitutional. Literally, it's not. But look at it. Why do you want somebody who doesn't know what they're doing? Check engine light has just gone off, and we've pulled into the wrong store. Makes no sense. And it is a form of giving his middle finger to the American people.